Here's the axle I'm planning to run into the back of this. This is actually pulled out of a 1954 F-100 that I have. This is not the original drivetrain to that, of course. This is a 1968 Chrysler 8 3/4 rear end. This particular one would have come out of a B body. So the axle flange to axle flange is 60 inches. And that's narrower than the one that come in this. This one that's in here is a 9-inch, which is, you know, that's a good trade-off. Ford 9-inch and the Chrysler 8 3/4 about the same strength. Actually, I think the 8 3/4 is a little bit stronger. But regardless, this one looks to be about 3 inches wider. So I'd like to get I want to put the narrowest axle I have on hand, just so I can get some deeper dish wheels, is my plan. And this rear end's not in very good shape. It's missing lots of parts, bolts and all kinds of stuff. So I'm just going to yank it out for now. The other 9-inch I have has the big bolt pattern. I don't want to mess with buying new axles right now. So we'll stick this in here for the time being. It's got, I believe it's about 355 gear ratio, which is, by my calculations, is about what I need for the tire height that I'm going to run, or it's going to put me in the ballpark. So we're going to go ahead and run this one for now. It's got the 742 case, which is the one to have as far as strength goes. I believe that's one of the best center sections that you can get for these. This is an open rear end, so is the other one, unfortunately. So I can always put a limited slip in later, not a big deal. That's what I like about these. Slide the axles out, and you can drop the whole pumpkin out, put it on a bench and re-gear it, or do all the work there. You don't have to take the whole axle out or do it underneath like a Dana 44 or a Dana 60. So, but Ford 9-inch is the same way. They're both easy to maintain in those regards. So I'm going to get this cleaned up, check and pull the plug, see if I can suck the fluid out of there. I don't really want to take the section out right now, but I don't have to. Assuming the fluid looks good. If it looks like crap, then I'll pull the section, see if there's rotten inside or not. So it might end up not using this axle if that doesn't pan out, but we're gonna clean it up today and see where that goes. Getting this 8 3/4 all cleaned up. Going pretty good. Had to cut the old spring perches off, which funny enough, they just used channel iron, some 3-inch channel iron, just welded it to the tube. Definitely don't recommend that, but obviously it worked. I'm going to use regular perches when I go to put it back in. I topped off the fluid because it was way low and found that it's leaking out of the pinion. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the rear end out for the moment until I get a new pinion seal, get that installed. Might as well do it while it's out than underneath the truck. Brakes all looked okay. I cleaned the drums up with a wire wheel on the inside. They had surface rust, but looked like plenty of meat still left on the pads and the drums. And then I blew all the brake lines out, cleaned all that up, cleaned the vent on the axle, and then gave it a little bit of a wire wheel here and there. Nothing too special, but might be able to paint it at some point once I get the new perches and stuff welded back on there. So we're gonna postpone that till I get the seal, and then I'll get it swapped in there. So I just got the pinion seal replaced. Here's the old one. A lot of these have a leather seal instead of the whatever that rubber stuff they use in there. And I thought the one I was buying was leather just because it was kind of on the cheap, and then the Timken part number I used, guys had said in the past that it was leather, but it's not anymore. Where's the part number? So 7216 Timken, and this is a 742 8 3/4 case, and the 741s and the I can't remember the other one. They use a different seal because this one has a larger pinion. That's why this is the desirable 8 3/4. Got a larger input pinion there. So got that done. Nothing too exciting. Normally when I do these, I'll take a little chisel and just mark the pinion, and then I'll mark the nut, so that when I put it back together, I put it right back where it is, or a hair tighter. This thing came off with almost no effort at all, and it's supposed to be torqued to a minimum of 240 foot-pounds, so it was loosening up. but I pulled the bearing out. It looked perfect. The race looked perfect. So I think we're okay. I ran it back down with my 1/2-inch impact gun as far as it would go. And then I don't have a 240, my torque wrench only goes up 200 foot-pounds. So I put that on there, and it is beyond that. It clicked at 200, so I know I'm over that. But I also put a little bit of Loctite on it, so I see no issues with that. And this particular rear end uses shims and not a crush sleeve, so all that stuff should already still be preset. So it already feels better than it did. It actually had some movement. So I don't know if somebody's replaced this seal before and didn't torque this down very good, which is possible. I mean, it's hard to get a lot of torque on these, especially if unless you got a breaker bar or something with a 2 or 4 foot pipe on it. That's a lot of torque. So luckily these new battery operated impact guns, man, they really lay it down, so it's good and tight now, and that feels good. So there was a little bit of a ridge on the part that the seal rides on, so that might be a problem. I sanded it a little bit with some 400 grit just to make sure it was clean of any bumps or any issues, but I might have to sleeve this at some point. But I don't want to put a bunch of time into this in case I decide to take it out and re-gear it, and if I do that, I'll put new bearings and stuff in the whole axles. I've got the Ford 9-inch removed, getting ready to put the 8 3/4 in. Something I wanted to point out of how to get this pin out that holds the rear hanger in. There's bolts that are supposed to be going through here, one on each side, or not, one here and then one on the other side, rather, not on each side of this, but there's one per side, and you take that out, and that's what locks this pin in there. And then there's a hole on the inside of the frame there that you can run a punch through, and see my finger there, to knock that pin out. And I hadn't seen this set, or hadn't messed with this before, and when I came to do it, those bolts weren't even in there, so there wasn't anything keeping this pin in the rear end, which is unfortunate because I didn't know that. Now I do, so I'm glad I went through the process of doing this, but I probably would have never noticed that until the spring fell out going down the road. I don't know. So another reason I need to go over this thing with a fine-tooth comb, but those are things that I'm didn't even know I needed to look for, but I do now. The front one still has it. See it, the front one there still has it in there. So I'll have to pick up a couple of those. I think they're kind of a special taper bolt thing. So I'm contemplating of taking some leaves out of this. I just don't know if I want to do it yet, but they say to leave the first, take the second, leave the third, take the fourth, and so on, and never have less than 5 springs. I'm thinking of just taking this one out for now. I don't want to soften it too much. I mean, it's a gamble because I don't have a lot of suspension travel since this is lowered like this, so the more I soften it up, the more that rear end's going to come up potentially and bang the bottom of that frame. So I think I'd be pretty comfortable at least taking one of them out. So we'll see. I'm debating that right now. And that can be done after I get the rear end in there for the most part, because the rear end goes on. Well, no, I guess I can't because I got to take the center pin out. So, well, I'm going to sit down and think about that right now, but I at least wanted to show you how I got that pin out in case you need. And I think it's the same front and rear and all that on these mid-50 Fords, so hopefully that helps somebody out. Okay, so what I decided to do is I'm just going to take out the second spring, second from the bottom, and then I'm going to well, I'm already half disassembled, but I'm going to finish disassembling the pack, wire wheeling between all of the springs, and make sure that it's not gouged anywhere between the 2 springs. These will start to chew into the spring above it as it flexes, so those little chew marks can affect the springs from working. So I'm going to get these cleaned up, and then I'll probably go ahead and just put some regular grease between them. I've heard that some guys use Teflon strips, but I'm not going to mess with that. I don't think. I'll just throw in some regular grease, and that'll kind of help them slip a little bit. I'm not sure if I'll keep these springs or go with an aftermarket, or the super slides or something, if these are not, I mean, these just are just too aggressive to ride around in. So I'm going to start here. The bushings are pretty worn. I'm just going to skip that for now, I think. But if I have to order some things from like for mid 50, like the center pin or whatever, then I'll probably go ahead and order the bushings and just do it while I have it at this point. So I was just going to quickly swap that axle in today, but it's turned into doing this, which is, it's fine. So I'll get to wire wheeling and see how far I can get on this today. Another thing I'm going to do while I'm cleaning these springs up is this leading edge here that touches the upper spring is to round that corner or round these edges off, because these have a tendency to bite into that upper spring over time. So I've just kind of beveled that edge around it. So I'm not sure how much a guy's supposed to take off. You're supposed to completely round these, but I figure at least if I take this leading edge off, that ought to be better, even if it ain't the 100% perfect way to do this. But and then any lines where the lower spring is bitten into it, I'm going to smooth that out, as well as bevel again the lower edge. And then don't paint these. You could paint probably the outsides and be okay, but I wouldn't paint anything around the bottoms, because anything that grips is going to keep these springs from wanting to slide on each other, and that's what gives you your suspension, or makes your suspension work. So keep that in mind. Somebody had already painted these when they did the frame, so I'm cleaning the paint off where the spring's going to slide. I'm not quite done with that one, but you get the idea. So here we are, got them all cleaned up, wire wheeled, got all the edges beveled, and we'll see how I did that there. Just rounded them so they're not eating into the top like they have been. Maybe that'll make them a little more slippery. So I'll coat some grease on these and start slapping them back together. I need to clean up my bolts and see if they're all still reusable as well, and go from there. So I've got this side back together. You definitely want to get some sort of clamps to use to compress them so you can get the center bolt back in. And I also reverse the center. Oh, it's falling down here, sorry. I also reverse that center bolt because it was in the factory way, which had the purchase on the bottom, but since this one's been flipped, the purchase on the top, so when I did that. All the bolts looked okay. There's a little bit of pitting on there, but nothing bad. I thread chased everything, cleaned it up, put a little bit of Loctite on all the nuts for everything here. But I think this is going to make a considerable difference. They're very slippery. I greased between every spring, which I know that grease will wear out over time, but in the meantime, it'll be a lot better. It'll probably take years for it to go anywhere since it's in between there, but maybe not. I don't know. Regardless, they're cleaned up, got the ends tapered and all that, so that should help the springs work better. So I'm pretty happy. I did get one of them reversed, and so I didn't get things lined up very good. So I want to do the other side. I need to take a punch or something and make sure I mark the front direction, so I don't make that mistake again, because that was a little annoying. But yeah, this ain't too bad. So here's the axle I pulled out and the one I'm going to put in. The axle I pulled out is not the original of this truck. It was 63 and a half, I think, flange to flange. And normally when you measure axles, you want to measure from this surface to the other surface. Measuring from the back plate doesn't give you a good measurement, because depending on the rear end of the back plate, all that. So this is really what matters, is where the wheel mounts with. So as you can see here, this is one of the main reasons I'm swapping it out, or the other main reason is just width. This will allow me hopefully to run a little bit deeper dish wheel in the back. On these trucks, the inside width isn't an issue. There's usually plenty of room between the springs and the wheel face to put plenty of tire on the inside, but you run out on the outside, which screws up how deep a dish you can run, which I like that. I like the older school look of having looking at the back and actually seeing that it's a wider wheel by the deep dish, and then a skinnier one up front, kind of the big and littles look. So that'll gave me a little bit, I think, inch and a half or so, or inch and a half on each side, probably closer to an inch and a half. So we'll see. I haven't really figured out what wheels or backspace I'm running, but in my feeling is in this case going to be more, a narrower is going to be better. So well, I just got the other spring finished, so I got both springs have been gone through, greased up, grinded, cleaned, all that blah blah blah, and put back together. So now I'm going to slide her back in there and pop it back up, and I'm going to be curious because and I'll follow up here in shortly once I get it all bolted in. Before I took this axle out, when I could stand here and jump up and down on the back of this, and it barely moved. So I kind of confident that just cleaning these up and greased them like that's going to make a noticeable difference. And then of course I did mention I took out one spring on each side, which was, this is just the second spring up from the bottom on each side I removed. So I don't know how much difference that makes, but at least getting these springs to working again would be nice. I'm hoping that hoping it's noticeable. Got the springs back in, got the axle bolted in there. I haven't fine-tuned its position yet. I'll have to do the pinion angle, all that. But so far, this has made a huge difference. Before, when I stepped on this thing, it would hardly move at all. I don't know if you can see that, but I can actually move the truck up and down just by jumping on it like that. And I couldn't do any of that before. It was just stiff as can be. Now I did take that one spring out, but I'm sure what did this is cleaning the springs and greasing and cleaning off those sharp edges and stuff. This is actually acts like it's going to work now, so that'll be a big improvement to what I had. It might still not ride like a car or whatever, which is fine, but definitely an improvement. So if you were going to do anything, if you weren't planning on changing your springs, definitely take them apart, clean them. You could try the Teflon strips, but as well. But this has made a very noticeable difference so far, so I'm pretty happy with that. I just realized I ran into a little, excuse me, a little bit of a snag that I need to correct. Down here, the centering pin hole, as you can see, it's too big for the pins. Those are 1/2-inch headed pins, which is the norm, but for some reason that hole's way bigger. This front one's a 1/2 inch, but that's the one that's in the center is not. These are Mopar. I've got 2 sets of them. They're Mopar brand perches, and you can see here that's the center one's bigger than the front one. The front one would work, but I can't, you don't want to offset it. So if you do end up buying these, put a part number on them, 6280, they won't work for 1/2-inch pins. So I've ordered some. Summit had some cheap ones for like 12 bucks. 3-inch tube and 1/2-inch center pin. So I went ahead and ordered new center pins since I had to make an order anyway. I don't know if I'll need them, but that way if I got those spring perches and these pins are still wrong, then I got new pins, 3/8 pins to put in there with the 1/2-inch head. So those are cheap too. They're like $8 or something. So I'll have to take this back apart to put those on, which is okay. I'm gonna build a shock mount too. I've got just a extra shock that are mocked up. It's too long for this project, but just kind of eyeballing where I want to go. So I'll weld a shock mount to that lower pad, I think is my plan, at least as of right now. So I'll have to do that, take that back apart to do that anyway. And then I noticed these wheels, the hub's too small for this 8 3/4 axle. As you can see, it's on there, but just enough to support the truck. It's not safe to drive. It's nowhere close to fitting that axle. So which is fine. I wasn't planning on using these wheels, but I'll have to change them before I can even do a test drive. But I like them on here because they're same size front and back, so I can level the truck and set the pinion axles and all, pinion angles and engine angles and all that stuff, which is good. So as soon as I get the pinion angle set, then I can pull them off. And I've got some other wheels laying around I can probably throw on before I buy an actual set, or we'll see. I need to get some torque thrust or something ordered for this eventually, but not until I get it running.